I'm going to make my face bigger. Boop. How are you? Welcome. I'm in control of the Instagram. That's why I'm talking to that. Hello, YouTube. How you doing? It's lovely to see you all here.
I'm so
It
sorry
is
to
History After Dark.
interject. I love you too,
I'm waiting for my lovely
Lucas.
pals to emerge into the Instagram abyss. What? And so I can get them up on to the screen, because you can see, if you're on the YouTube, you can see all of their beautiful faces already. If you're not on the YouTube, then you have to wait for them to appear on the Instagram. I think is Catherine having? I can't see Catherine. Are you having kittens, darling? Is there a problem? Oh dear, there's an issue. Hang on. Hello, love. Hello. No requests. Say I've got no requests. I think I can. I think I can see Catherine angrily smashing her phone. So that probably she's trying to get on.
Someone said, "Why are they late, or are we early?" No, we're late, but it's all Catherine's fault, basically. There's no two ways about it. Well, technology anyway.
Try and get me to come up.
It's not letting you up.
It's my fault. It was my fault. YouTube end, and now it's my fault. This end.
You can watch us on YouTube. Yeah. But we can't hear her because we've got her muted on YouTube.
Both platforms this week, not just one. I can't.
Right. So we'll give it a little second. How is everybody? Instagram and YouTube. How are you doing? You having a nice time?
Send me.
Let me see if I can invite
her.
her.
They can hear me.
Let me see if that will happen. Invite. Will that work? I've invited you now. Has that done something?
Shit!
There we go. Nice
there
gentlemen.
we go.
I'm sorry.
Right in there.
That expletive came before the disclaimer. Because Catherine's apparently, it's not just her technology that's malfunctioned, it's also her mouth. Before we get any further, shall I just jump right in? We'll talk about technical difficulties in a minute. I better just get the disclaimer out of the way, because clearly, Madam can't be trusted. Hello, friends. It's History After Dark. It's now gone 8:20. Catherine's having some kind of conniption when it comes to technology. It's not been working for her the last few weeks. So actually, we are giggling, but it must be incredibly frustrating because everything's
worse. The older I get, the worse it's getting. Honestly,
you need some kind of like, I don't know.
I need a technology exorcism, like a reset.
Something needs to happen.
It'll turn you off and see it back on again.
Last week too. Yes, it was. It was.
Yeah.
Although we were late by design last week, actually.
Yes, we were late by design.
And then later.
Yeah. And then later than that.
But we are here now, and that's what matters. We called it History After Dark because we wanted a space where we could talk about our passion for history, express that, dive down into the facts, explore the interpretations, but to be able to do it with the free and liberal use of four-letter expletives, with a veering towards the innuendo, with filth, nastiness, and general vulgarity. So with that being said, if you are in an open plan office and you don't want your boss to hear whatever depraved nonsense will come out of, it's too late, but it's going to get worse, friends. That's bless you. Put a headphone in. If you are in a car or a kitchen or a living room with a small child who is a dobber, we call that child Timmy. Timmy is a problem. Timmy is the sort of child who hears one depraved thing once. Can't remember how to do anything you've instructed him to do, but he hears something naughty. He locks it away in his mind palace. That is a steel trap. But he takes it into school with him. And in school, he speaks to his primary school teacher. In my mind, she's Miss Honey from Matilda. And he will tell her the thing. And now Miss Honey does not listen to Had. So she does not know the first cardinal rule of Had, which is, friends, if you don't know what it means, don't Google it. It's not for you. So Miss Honey Googles it. And then she is utterly engulfed with the depravity to the point that you get called at school because now you've got to explain why Timmy knows this thing and also why you have to pay for Miss Honey's therapy. She's going to need a lot of it. So if you want to avoid that, put a headphone in. Alternatively, you can always watch on the playback unless you have technical issues like Catherine does, or unless we happen to say something that is so unspeakably offensive that we have to yeet the footage into the sun. It's happened once before. We're due, frankly. So it's always worth watching us live because it's only a matter of time. It's only a matter of time.
Right.
So I've already mentioned our first rule, which is if you don't know what it means, it's not for you. Don't Google it. Our second rule is we pray to whatever deity you believe in that there is, in fact, all adults in the audience. With that being said, we don't call this a drinking game. If you want to play, that's up to you. But we are not your medical provider, and this is never medical legal advice. Finally, if you say something that is really ridiculous in the comments, like you want to complain about the fact we swear, despite the fact that I have crafted a disclaimer that is frankly poetry, if you want to put some wheezy little words about how it's very unladylike to swear, first of all, the disclaimer's done now, fuck you. But second of all, we aren't going to pin that comment for people to shame you, because we know what you're doing, Barbara. And what you're doing is you are looking for public shaming, because that's your kink, and kinks are fine. We aren't going to kink shame you. They might, I won't. But kink without consent, yuck. Ooh,
so now we had someone new. We now have Barbara with her Barbara and her kink shaming.
I've had a real life Karen.
Barbara's real. Barbara is not real. She's not real. I'm making her up. That is a name to protect the guilty. Because if you're here, you fucking know who you are. So with that being said, welcome to History After Dark. We are on the letter Y for yellow and Richard, Duke of York. Let's get this.
Yeah. Let's
boom. And with that being said,
get it on.
Get it on. With that being said, I'm actually in charge of the first bit of the git for Richard, Duke of York. So we are looking at how he was a git, and if you can join us on YouTube, this is the time to start having a little look over there, because I have crafted a slide that my glamorous assistant Philippa is going to put on screen. This slide is a family tree, but I want to caveat this very, very clearly. This is a family tree that talks about the descent from Edward III that gets you to the various monarchs, because these people are reckless breeders. And this, if I could not possibly have fit it all on a screen. We are here to talk about Richard, Duke of York. He's down at the bottom. You may notice that his parents are related, because it's medieval England and they're royal. So let me begin at the very beginning. It's a very good place to start. Richard, Duke of York. He becomes Richard III, Duke of York. He is a claimant to the English throne, the only son of Richard of Conisbrough, 4th Earl of Cambridge, and his wife / cousin, Anne Mortimer. I mean, distant cousin, but still gross.
Did they need the Pope? That's what. That's the line, isn't it? The line should be further away.
The thing is, they may have needed the Pope, because I will get to that in a second.
I'm sorry.
So Anne Mortimer is the daughter of Roger Mortimer, who is the 4th Earl of March. Now, the March name, that does pop up, because the future Edward IV is Edward of March. So we do get around in that way. My favourite thing is that Richard, Duke of York, was born on my birthday. Oh. He didn't ask, just did it.
To show he was there first.
Just decided that he was. I mean, he knew I was coming.
He did. I went back in my time machine before the conversation, and I told him this would be a great day.
You caused the Wars of the Roses, didn't you? If you went back to here.
So he was born on September the 22nd, 1411. I was not born in 1411. Before you get your cheek on, his parents married in secret, so they may potentially have needed the Pope because of their consanguinity. That's a hard word to say. But they married in secret. There was no chance to really punish them, because they both carked it fairly soon. His mother is dead a year or two after he's born, and then his father dies in 1414. Now, depending on what point of time he dies in 1414, that means that Richard is 3. Around 3 when he is orphaned. Now, his father had been executed because he was involved in a plot to depose Henry V. This brings me now to our timeline of people and how these people may have a claim to the throne. So we have to go all the way back to Edward III. Edward III's eldest son, Edward, he gets the sobriquet, the Black Prince. He predeceased his father, which is why he is not Edward IV. His son, though, is an infant when his father dies, and so thus there is still an heir to the throne through that line of the eldest son. That king then becomes King Richard II. Richard II will later be deposed by his cousin. His cousin is the son of Edward III's third surviving son, John of Gaunt. John of Gaunt, by his first wife, Blanche, has a son called Henry. He is Henry Bolingbroke. He becomes Henry IV. He is the one who usurps or takes the throne from his cousin Richard. From Henry IV, we then get his son, Henry V, and also that person's son, Henry VI. Henry VI is the mad king. There's a much more pleasant way of saying that. Henry VI also takes the throne as a very, very young child. He is, because of his father Henry V's campaigns in France, he is also the heir to France. His maternal grandfather then dies fairly soon after his father, meaning that this little infant child is King Henry VI of England, and he's also the King of France. Trying to hold both of those thrones for an infant is nigh on impossible. Making things more problematic is that by the time Henry VI is in his 20s, it seems very evident that he has inherited his maternal grandfather's mental instability. We aren't sure what mental instability he has. There have been a whole host of things, including catatonic schizophrenia, bipolar, clinical depression, all sorts of things that some have even mentioned porphyria, however that's pronounced. But anyway, the problem then becomes who is going to be in charge of England when your king is potentially seen as being not the full ticket, so to speak, and mentally unwell. It becomes problematic because a medieval king is supposed to be able to lead troops into battle. This is one of the reasons why they don't particularly like women on the throne, because they're not supposed to be able to lead armies into battle. The same thing sort of goes if you have a king who is deemed to be or found to be not in his full mind, not in charge of his capacities completely. It does become quite problematic in terms of medieval kingship. There is a necessity to have a regent. Henry VI is married to a very strong woman called Margaret of Anjou. Margaret of Anjou earns the name the she-wolf of France in Shakespeare's eyes. I mean, I think that technically, if you think about what a she-wolf is, somebody who is incredibly protective of her young and her pack, to my mind, in the best possible way, Margaret of Anjou is in fact a she-wolf. Shakespeare did not mean it as a compliment. So what we have here is we have a conversation about who should be in charge. Now, we have to go from John of Gaunt back to the elder brother, to Lionel of Antwerp.
That's a great name.
It's a fabulous name.
Lionel of Antwerp.
His daughter has another fabulous name, Philippa.
Yeah, spelt correctly too.
There we go. Now, Philippa then has a son, Roger, and from Roger we get to Anne, who is Richard, Duke of York's mother. Now, you might say to yourself, well, surely then Richard's claim supersedes that of the Henrys, because John of Gaunt is a third son and Lionel of Antwerp is a second son. Nay, because then the claim comes through a lady, and that means the claim is less good because there's a uterus involved. Of course, there usually is a uterus involved, but this is more dominant uterus. So because it comes down a matrilineal line, it then becomes less valuable, they would argue. But what also assists Richard, Duke of York, in his claim is that if we hop over John of Gaunt to Edward III's fourth surviving son, Edmund of Langley, wouldn't you know, he has a son, Richard. So this is the boy. This is the boy child. So then what we have is we have Edmund of Langley's son, Richard, and Lionel of Antwerp's daughter, great-granddaughter getting married. So we've got a great-granddaughter and a son of sons of Edward III who marry to produce Richard, Duke of York, which means that he is doubly descended from Edward III. This is a very, very good claim to at least be regent. Quite when he decides that he wants more than that, and wants to go beyond simply being the heir apparent to actually being the heir, is another question, which I'm sure that we're going to be discussing with the ladies. But I hope that's a useful family tree to discuss Richard's claim to the throne. As one thing I would always like to caveat is, because as well, the flip side of that is also descending from John of Gaunt, which I put on there, by his mistress Catherine Swynford, who he later marries, and their children are later legitimised by the Pope. Whether or not that includes their right to inherit the royal titles is something that's hotly debated. People argue about it. From John of Gaunt and Catherine Swynford, we have John Beaufort, another John Beaufort, and then Margaret Beaufort, mother of Henry Tudor, later King Henry VII. So this is how essentially the Wars of the Roses plays out in one family. All of these people are related to each other. They are fighting, and the people that are suffering are the human beings who aren't royal for the most part. It's their livelihoods and lives and children that are going to be the not cannon fodder, but yeah, actually it does actually become cannon fodder during, because there are, I mean, the guns aren't great, but they're there. But it's going to be them that suffer, because quite frankly, if you're in a suit of armor, for the most part, you're going to be ransomed off unless you can be bludgeoned to death in the Tower of London, like Henry VI would have been.
Apparently,
when we talk about
allegedly,
yeah, or maybe he may have, of course, died of melancholy. That's the other option.
Yes.
The one thing I will say is that when it comes to claim to the throne, we talk about that a lot. Ultimately, might does frequently trump right, and if you've got the bigger sword and you're better at swinging it, that makes you king. So I hope that's helpful.
It's very, very helpful. Very good context.
Very confusing state of affairs.
Yes.
The other thing, the other thing to say about right to the throne as well is it's just a system of which privileged person gets to tell everyone else what to do. There's nothing natural about it, particularly as in it's not a rule of biology.
No. One thing I do also want to state is we are talking about gits in this one. I think on this family tree, to my mind, and you can feel free to disagree with me, there is one king who is truly innocent, and that is Henry VI.
We'll get into that.
I have a lot of sympathy for Henry VI. I don't think he was perfect, but I feel like he gets a really. It's just, I think it's really tragic. His story really is very tragic for me. But that's the tale I'm telling. Who's next? What are we doing? Word of the week. Word of the week.
It's not mine, is it?
It's not me. I did last week.
Then we'll have to rely on.
She's here. Oh, that was our
Cloud Hunting Light Weaver has asked, "What's a git?" They're an American. Hello.
I have
an unpleasant and contemptible person.
Yes.
There you go. It's on YouTube. Watch it on YouTube, and I've got a little ticker tape going down the bottom because I could never remember how to define it.
I actually remembered. I'm quite impressed with myself.
I'm impressed with you.
Makes a change.
Right. This is a phrase, actually. Yes. All holiday at Peckham. All holiday at Peckham.
What was Peckham famous for?
Del Boy.
Del Boy.
Yeah, but not when this was written. High-rise flats.
High-rise, yeah. 1980s style poverty.
Yeah. Freewheelers.
Okay, so what was Peckham known for previously then? I don't know. So when it says holiday, is it anything to do with something that people do in their leisure time, not necessarily a holiday per se, but something to do with leisure. No, okay. Something that you would buy there, that you would take on holiday. Blue passport.
Was it a place with prostitutes?
No.
Probably. I mean, there's a fair likelihood.
Is it the... Oh no, it's not there, is it?
I like
Sorry,
pretty pics, a euphemism for an annually planned orgy.
There you go.
No, I wish.
So I was going to say that that out of the city cemetery, but it's not Peckham, is it?
Jennifer, I've been to Peckham. Not sure it's holiday worthy.
Correct. So the definition is, and it's a weird one, it is all over for a business or person. All holiday at Peckham.
Oh, like this?
Oh.
Like
it's
game over.
All holiday at Peckham. It means that. So it's like, oh, did you hear so and so? He's been done on fraud charges. Oh, all holiday at Peckham. I don't know why.
I don't. That sounds very London centric.
It's all holiday at Peckham. I am going to start using it though.
I quite like it.
When they're like, oh, where's so and so? You didn't come into work today. All holiday at Peckham. I'm going to use it because no one's going to know what I'm talking about, but they will know from the context clues.
Yeah, I mean.
Well, if you do that, they might think he's popped it. Yeah. Nice.
Okay.
Right.
Beverly, there were certainly holidays before the 19th century because that's where the origin of the term comes from, holy day. So there were days set aside in the liturgical calendar that were for rest, for worship, etc., which is now become, secularized to holiday. But yes, it was a holy day.
In fact, there's some. I haven't looked into this, but I did hear something about it. Actually, people got more time off, sort of pre-defined holidays than as in weekends and stuff than they did since.
Yeah, but
it's only just a revolution, basically.
To spend it saying whatever I do is going to sound inappropriate.
Yeah, but there's feasting days, and they had,
yes,
maypoles.
Maypoles, that's true.
To get the feasting days, you have to do the fasting days.
Oh,
and fasting food can, but in general, like a lot of medieval and Tudor food, humoral science-based food, it's fucking weird, guys. It's fucking weird.
That's vile.
There's a lot of sugar in places there shouldn't be sugar.
Oh,
I don't know. I don't know how I feel about sugared fish. I do know, not good. Don't want
fish.
I don't like fish.
I don't want sugar in it. I don't want fish in a sweet sauce. I don't want that.
To be fair, I might be able to eat fish if it was in a very sweet sauce, because I don't like fish. It's too.
To my knowledge, there was not a prison at Peckham either.
Better.
To my knowledge, there was no prison at Peckham. I'm happy to be corrected on that. I don't know every prison. I've not visited all of them.
Yeah.
I have plans. I've got a little checklist.
I've been inside 2 prisons.
Oh god,
and they weren't nice.
That sounds like a story for another day.
I think I'll go Premier Inn. Honestly,
yeah.
I think I'll.
Yeah, well, that one you were in the other week, I felt like we might get murdered in there. So
it was a little bit murdery. Right. So there we go.
I haven't been in prison.
Wow.
Oh God, no! I haven't been in prison. I was working for the forensic service. I haven't been to prison. Yes,
for later.
I'm sure.
We'll get you there. Don't worry. We'll get you there.
We'll get her in the Winnebago first, and then
lock her up.
Someone sent me a picture of a Winnebago. My friend Sam, who my friend Sam. Oh, I was at a camping and touring show, and I saw this, and I thought of you.
It's going forth. I love this for us. Alicia, I don't think there was to be honest, Peckham may be known for something other than only fools and horses, but not to my knowledge. And I kind of feel as well, all holiday at Peckham, it sort of feels like they would say in Only Fools and Horses, be like, where's Del Boy? You know, all holiday at Peckham. Mate, all holiday.
Oh, maybe
I
it's
wonder if
because
it's in there.
maybe it's because
I'm a Londoner.
all holiday at Peckham is because having a holiday in Peckham would be really shit. It would be, oh, and I don't want to go on holiday to Peckham. Maybe it's
If you're
that.
holidaying in Peckham, you've done for. You're screwed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've hit the lowest
Yeah.
point of your life.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Right.
Just before I start my bit, Erica just says she sat here watching us while her husband irons her had jumper.
Good.
Excellent. We're getting
Good.
jumpers, aren't we, Catherine?
yeah, I'm cold, quite
Cold
frankly.
now.
I can't lie.
Yeah.
And I want one too.
And
You're going to get one. You're going to get
Right,
one.
Next.
Right. Okay.
Next section.
This might. Okay. Right. I'm going to give some more context than I had before we looked into this. So I hope you enjoy this bit. So some of you may not. I have a feeling. But as Kat has already said, Henry VI is a babe when he becomes king. And as he grows, the hope, the expectation is that he's going to turn into his father, hopefully, the warrior king, who, let's be fair, I think is the only reason why no one mentions Henry IV's usurpation when it comes to Henry VI, is because in between you have the warrior king, Henry V, who has, by war and negotiation, got lots and lots of lands in France. But then he goes and dies, which is really inconvenient because Henry VI is only little. So, of course, this isn't great for the country. But, you know, he's Henry V's son. He's going to grow up, and we've only got a few years to sort of muddle through his minority, and then we'll all be fine. Unfortunately, from the get-go, this is a boy more interested in his studies, in religion. He doesn't like swearing. There's the chances of him being involved in anything remotely aggressive is very small. Bless. Yeah. Well, we'll see. So and that continues. He actually gets given they again, a bit like Richard II, they say, 14, it's okay, he can go into his majority. But that's a bit more about sort of fewer people taking really acting as the king through his name, because he's very malleable. So whoever's got his ear gets what they want. When he is so it becomes clear that there needs to be an ongoing collaboration between all the powerful, nobles and men of the country, really, because the king is inept. So this is going to require a collaboration. So what could possibly go wrong? Now, when he is left to make decisions on his own, they turn out to be incredibly expensive. He unwittingly, for someone who loves peace, he unwittingly creates a lot, and this is not just the Wars of the Roses, but a lot of violent conflict. So because he either takes action that is ill-advised, or he doesn't take action, and so, for example, he gives a really lucrative post to two people of rival families at the same time. That continues. That this is the Courtneys and the Bonvilles. This continues. Their actual physical fighting continues for ages afterwards. He grants pardons without knowing who he's pardoning. He agrees to petitions for money, which are really costly, giving away thousands of pounds each time. 2,000 marks on one occasion in February 1438. He gives away custodianships. Basically, if someone asked, he gave. And the royal coffers and the royal property was just hemorrhaging because he would just give it. Presumably because he wanted to be nice, and he wanted to
I mean,
recognize people,
because he was already showing signs of like desperate anxiety and mental health issues, and people pleasing is a symptom of that. Like just like pathological conflict avoidance is a symptom of being profound. It can be a symptom of being profoundly mentally unwell. Possibly,
yeah. The problem is a king who can't rule creates a vacuum. And if they're incapable of ruling and satisfying the position, there's going to be real world consequences. And there are real world consequences, no matter whether you think Henry was a nice man or not. Him in that position as king has real world consequences for everybody, basically, including himself, including his family in the end, which I'm sure Catherine will go over. But so, for instance, with this all giving away royal property, November 1449, the crown debts are £372,000. He has an annual income of £5,000. And he has no children at this point. He has no parents. His mother and his stepmother are both dead. Clearly, one of them, both of them are going to be. All his uncles are dead. There's no extended family. He has no extended family that he has to give lands to, or this is all things that he's given away. Now, that might not actually be that unusual. The problem with Henry was the perception. He's in debt. And he's we can't go into it now in much detail, but he's losing the lands in France left, right and centre. If you're going to be taxing your population to defend or expand the lands, you better be winning. And he's not winning, he's losing hand over fist. Now, so I'm going to take you to England in 1450. Now, by now, Henry's lost most of his father's hard-won lands in France. And again, this is him vying for peace. So he negotiates away, I can't remember which parts, I think it was Maine and somewhere. But anyway, in a peace treaty with the French, they agree to basically a peace. We'll be peaceful for 20 years if you give us this like huge pieces of land. Which he does because he wants peace, presumably. But again, so that means he's taken land off his nobles. He's taken land out of his own coffers. He's taken titles off English nobles. So I've said about the taxation as well. So the perception, is he's given away all his wealth, and now we're being taxed. Nobody actually wants to blame Henry at any point. So there are a number of people who take the fall for him. In 1450, so this is all in 1450, Suffolk, Duke of Suffolk, is tried for treason, and he's blamed for the loss of the lands in France. He insists that he refuses the right for a trial by his peers. He wants to be heard by the king only. And the king, unsurprisingly, says, no, I don't think he's guilty of all these. They were a bit ridiculous, these charges of treason. I mean, they came up with a good few. I think there was a little incest one in there. Well, there was some sexual depravity one in there as well.
With incest.
Yeah,
cheeky incest.
It's like they can't just. Anyway, yeah, so they really laid it on thick.
And Henry, you're bad at your job.
No, and Henry said, no, I think, there's a few misprision of treason down here that maybe he's guilty of. So, no, he's not going to be put to death. He's going to be banished for 5 years. But Suffolk is murdered on the ship that's supposed to be taking him I think he was going to France. I actually don't know. But anyway, he was going somewhere to be banished. And he's murdered on the ship. He's horribly beheaded. I won't go into detail, but it was rank.
I mean, it's never nice.
It was never nice, but like
it's a bad one.
This was a bad one. This was a bad one. And his body and head, so his head's displayed and on Dover Beach. I don't know if it's a beach at Dover. It's a beach.
Oh, wow.
Next to his body.
There must be.
The people of Kent fear the worst. They fear, because he left from Dover, Kent. They fear that they're going to get blamed for the murder of Suffolk. And there's a rumor that starts to go around that Henry is actually going to harry Kent because in reprisal. And that is one of the facts that leads, and we mentioned this very briefly last week, actually, that leads to Jack Cade's rebellion, so the Cade rebellion of 1450. Now, actually, Cade's rebellion, we can't go into who Cade was at the moment, but incredibly interesting man, actually, in his own right, a leader, a soldier, and they actually have a manifesto. And the manifesto, whenever there's a manifesto, like with Magna Carta, it's very telling as to what the king is seen or actually doing wrong, because it's a list of things that they weren't looking at, and it included immunity from blame for the death of Suffolk, but also they wanted inquiries into local and national corruption. They wanted lords impeached for treasonous acts. They wanted action against rigged elections, extortion, and some guarantee that the king wasn't being manipulated. So all of these are in Cade's manifesto. So you can see this is a popular uprising. This isn't the nobles here. This is a popular uprising, and that actually was indicative, really, of the feeling across the country. The population are not happy. They can work out that the king is being pulled from pillar to post by whoever's got his ear at the time. They're not daft. They can see corruption on a local level. They can see corruption on a national level. They can see things aren't getting done about it. And basically, there's 3 years of really catastrophic sort of decision making. With lands being lost and all this and lots of unrest. And what I should say is Jack Cade, who led Cade's rebellion, used the name Mortimer, and Kat mentioned there that the Duke of York's mother, Anne, is a Mortimer. Now, that then has implications for York. His name actually, as well as Cade using that name, and York, there's no provable link for York of York to the Cade rebellion. But York's name is being used. It is being talked about by the population because he is a fully grown, and closest relative to the king. The king's uncles all having died by this point, and untainted by all these losses, because he's been in Ireland for this period. So they see him as untainted and with a close association to the throne. No one's talking about overthrowing Henry VI by this point. They're only talking about getting rid of the advisors who are giving him, who are causing all these issues. So York returns from Ireland in September 1450 with the idea that he's going to take sort of the position of the king's right-hand man to get all this sort of sorted. However, because his name has been invoked so often, he's not allowed to land. Anyway, so he is in I can't remember the first place he was going to try and land in Wales. So he has to wait another day and land somewhere else, and then he makes it for his for a series of his own properties, and he's gathering support as he comes through the country. So he's going down to London, and see, I don't agree, Lottie Rose, but anyway. So yeah, he's building up support in order to get to London again, to get rid of the people around the king, or he thinks he's going to take the right hand man position. But that has already been taken by John Beaufort, Duke of Somerset, who by the time he gets there, he's also, York is an unknown entity to Henry VI. Somerset, he knows him. Somerset is friendly with Margaret of Anjou, Henry's wife, and so Somerset already has the position. This, of course, is going to annoy York because he is, I can tell Lottie, she absolutely hates his guts.
It's coming through.
I forgot what I was saying, sorry. But so the Duke of Somerset has got this position. York's not too pleased because he is the most senior sort of living relative of the king, so he sees it as it should be his. But I really have to emphasize just how unstable. I was going to say, it's kind of got instability in my head. Unstable the country was. There was not just popular risings all over the place. The Courtenays and the Bonvilles are still Bonville. Anyway, are still scrapping over this position. The Nevilles and the Percys are going at each other so much in the north that it's pretty much a northern civil war.
Well, the Nevilles go at everybody. That's why they're so.
Well, the Nevilles and the Percys. Well, yeah. Well, they probably win out. But the one thing they do appear to agree on is that Somerset should be Henry's right-hand man, not York, for some reason. Then we get to 1453. Henry has a stonking couple of months. He really does. He starts to make inroads. Him and his government start to make inroads into law and justice, actually tackling some of these injustices that are supposed to be happening. He gets Margaret pregnant. But then Bordeaux. So John Talbot, Earl of Shrewsbury, is who was the terror of the French, apparently the English Achilles. They got him at Bordeaux, and him and his troops were annihilated, and Bordeaux was taken back. So in one fell swoop, Henry loses more land and one of his most trusted, experienced soldiers. And it's at this point that we see him go into his catatonic state. They didn't have any they don't know how to describe it. I mean, we don't know how to, so they can only describe his symptoms. It's a bit like a waking coma. So he was just incredibly quiet. He didn't have use of his limbs. He wouldn't speak. He couldn't, you couldn't get anything from him. Indeed, his son is born in the October, and he makes no recognition of him at all. It doesn't do anything. He's not. I mean, it's slightly better than his maternal grandfather. At least he wasn't smearing himself in his own excrement, which is unfortunately what Charles VI. Charles VI of France was his maternal grandfather. But he's just really still, and they can't get anything out of him. Now, the birth of the Prince of Wales now precipitates this need to sort of work out what they're going to do. So the king is in this catatonic state. He has the Prince of Wales, and they a mini parliament sort of thing a meeting of the council, not a parliament. And York, first of all, is supposedly going to be excluded from this, but then he is invited. We don't know who by, actually, but before he gets there, he has the Duke of Norfolk, who's a one-time ally, to start a verbal attack against Somerset and accuse him of treason, accuse him of all sorts of things. And everyone there seems quite surprised and just sort of goes for it. Catherine?
Just quickly, it was a Mowbray Duke of Norfolk. It wasn't a Howard Duke of Norfolk before.
There you go.
Sorry.
See, you should do a series on the Dukes of Norfolk.
You should. I love them all, bastards. I love them.
It's also worth flagging. It's also worth flagging that with Margaret of Anjou having the heir, that considerably moves up her power in the rankings. Like I think she was a powerful and astute woman, but having that boy, that's ace in the hole.
I will come on to her because
there's
a big no, it's fine. But so Somerset is a friend of Margaret of Anjou. York through Norfolk basically has him, accused of treason. He is arrested. He's taken to the Tower. So now he's out the way, and York basically takes the reins of the king's right-hand man, and he gets all the lords to swear an allegiance to the king. and he's basically put into an official role as sort of protectorate as a protectorate role whilst the king is ill. Margaret of Anjou, of course, now with the son, like Kat says, makes a bid for power as well. She can't see why she can't be doing that. And so you get the beginning of these factions. Really, it's a Margaret of Anjou faction, York and Warwick. Warwick's involved, and that's because of the Percy Neville thing. But anyway, that's too complicated to go into at the moment. So this is where they're going to have this sort of almost parliament. It's sort of not called a parliament, but it has everyone who's supposed to be in parliament there. At Leicester, that's where it's supposed to happen. Up your neck of the woods, Catherine. And of course, they're both
exciting things has ever happened here.
Well, it didn't happen there because what happened?
There's a few things that never happened that did never happen.
It actually never happened there, because so both sides take their armies and their leggies, and they go to. Sorry, it's getting late. I'm getting tired. I'm getting silly.
Showing off.
I'm showing off
their armies and their leggies.
It's like their armies and their leggies.
It's a terrible joke. I love it. Do more.
Do it.
Do more.
So they're supposed to be meeting in Leicester, but the royal so the army that Margaret of Anjou and whatever are gathering up is gathering at St Albans. And a letter is sent to York and Warwick to disband their army. Come along still, but disband your army. They were like,
all
no
right.
fucking way. is that going to happen?
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so they're I'm only an hour away. I'm only an hour away. So they come to St Albans. Actually, I think they were a day away. But anyway, they come to St Albans and they start negotiations. And the first day, they don't get anywhere. And actually, Somerset's, by the way, now back out of town. So he's one of the ones negotiating. That's going to go down well, isn't it? And they're basically waiting. They're basically waiting for the bishops to turn up with more troops. So they're stalling for time. They're waiting for backup. Whether York and Warwick know this, I mean, they're pretty savvy. So maybe they did. Maybe they gathered what was going on, or maybe they just thought that the outcome of the first day of negotiations, clearly nothing much else was going to happen. They weren't going to get what they were after. So anyway, this results in the first Battle of St Albans. And we're off, exactly, in which Somerset's killed. So, big tick for York, get him out the way. And Henry Percy, remembering Warwick, who's Earl of Richard Neville. He's a Neville. The Percys are fighting with the Nevilles. Henry Percy gets killed, so tick there for Warwick. So they take out two of their biggest rivals, and they take they take possession of the king. I think they do. Yeah. But this is all fought. Both sides are saying they're fighting for the king. They're just fighting over who should be helping support the king. If you see what I mean. Both sides think the other is corrupt and leading the king astray. Henry, bless him, is way more bothered about designing his own tomb at Westminster. He seems to have decided that he's maybe on the way out or something. So sorry. So what I should have mentioned, is that Henry, by the time of the Battle of St Albans, is not in this catatonic state anymore. Although he's still the inept sort of inept. I don't really like that word, using that word, but he's not engaging. He's really
I think he's diagnosed. I think today he'd be on a hell of a lot of antidepressants, and I personally think the tomb designing is like hope. he wants death. I
He's
think.
getting
I think
morbid.
he's very depressed.
He's getting
Yeah.
morbid. Yes, depressed. Yeah, exactly.
I think he's very, very, very unwell.
And that
very unwell.
So sorry, I missed this bit out. So when he comes out of that catatonic state and finally recognizes his son as well, which is great. He the mandate for York to be in control is no longer there, and Margaret of Anjou basically steps back into the power, releases Somerset. So sorry, that was quite a big bit I forgot. And yeah, Lottie Rose just said Henry does actually come close to death at the Battle of St Albans because an arrow does cut his neck, slices past his neck. So maybe he's literally, I think he's depressed, but he's also literally come close to death as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, he gets very absorbed in designing his own tomb. Now, again, the populace do seem to just get what's happening. Maybe there's less people in England. Maybe word gets around quicker at this point. But Margaret of Anjou is the one that when the king and queen go anywhere, Coventry was a big supporter. And in fact, Margaret of Anjou spends a lot of time in Coventry. It's her who they are really coming out to see and supporting. Bless him. So where do I go from this now, though? So
it's horrendously complicated.
It is very, very
complicated.
So we've got rid of two of Henry's, closest advisors, Suffolk and Somerset now, and you end up with almost a second. I sort of called it a second protectorate. It's not. What York is trying to do at this point is move into those roles that Suffolk and Somerset have held. But Margaret is more and more determined that she should be wielding the power. And Henry, bless him, has this idea for a love day. And he gets the factions together and they have to shake hands and promise each other some money for the people they've killed and link arms and walk through the streets in a public display of unity and forgiveness and whatever. Now, I don't know if you ever were made to shake hands with the bully bitch
when you're a toddler
at school. Did it ever resolve the situation? And in this case, you won't be surprised to find out it did not resolve.
For about 20
the situation.
minutes, it looked a bit better.
No, never worked
Only
for me at all.
You're seething on the inside. And being in such proximity to the person that you hate the most is just fueling
fanning the flames.
Fanning the flames. So Richard, Duke of York, is linking arms with Margaret of Anjou. I mean, can you imagine?
I can't. It's beyond ridiculous.
So basically, Margaret gets really pissed off, not surprisingly. And anyway,
I was hurt.
Yeah, acting in the name of her son, she takes more power. She dismisses supporters of York from their positions. She demands. She based herself in Coventry. She demands support from the counties surrounding that to come to her cause on pain of prosecution. So she's really not messing about now. She issues acts of attainder. Deprives those who either had openly or even not openly supported York. They might just be some were related by marriage. They had their lands whipped away from them. So the stage is set, really, and I will come to a conclusion in a moment. The stage is set, really. Whatever you think of York and Warwick, Margaret is not really giving them any weight. There really isn't much conciliation to be had. Neither side is really interested in doing that. Henry might be, but unfortunately, Henry doesn't get the say. I'm going to skip forward to. Oh God, sorry. How much have I got left? Yeah, okay. I am going to conclude now. 1460, because now York is putting forward the proposal that they depose Henry VI. So this changes. So he's had, the official protectorate when Henry's ill. He's become Henry's right-hand man after the Battle of St Albans. In 1460 now he's saying, actually, I think what we should do is actually the king can't do the role. And he starts to make the dynastic claim which Cat went through. He hasn't made that claim before. So now he says, well, I am actually, when you look at it, I'm descendant from the second son of Edward III. And actually the inheritance through the female line was allowed in English law. It depends on what day it was and what argument you want to win.
Allowed, but not preferable.
Basically.
It's allowed,
not preferable,
but it's not preferable.
Unless it's your line, and then it is preferable.
Of course.
But then of course you have got the double lineage through the fourth son as well. But he hasn't made these claims before.
Just suddenly figured it out who his grandparents were.
Just suddenly worked it out.
I found it.
Yeah.
Did you know?
Did you know that actually?
Did you know
Things you learn.
My granddaddy.
Things you learn.
The more you know.
I think he thought he had a good case, but actually when it came to it, the reality of deposing a king, people did not have the stomach for that. So went back to negotiations. All lands were supposed to be given back, which Margaret had rescinded. So the agreement was that would happen, and Henry would be king for the rest of his natural life, after which York would become king. This obviously takes Edward, Prince of Wales.
I've come
out
in
of
at the accord. I've kind of come
yeah.
in
So
at the accord,
I have literally then written, Catherine, the stage was set for war.
Okay.
Catherine. But what I would like to say is, I do wonder, and maybe this is something for after Catherine's done her bit, if it had just been Henry VI, if Margaret hadn't been on the scene, I do wonder if it would have escalated to the stage that it did.
And I would like to offer another thing that we can potentially talk about at the end. The Loveday, we all thought, we kind of joked about it and said it's ridiculous, but let us just imagine that it was Henry VIII doing a Loveday. And Henry VIII forced, I don't know, Thomas Wolsey to hold hands with Anne Boleyn and process through the streets.
You'd be doing it.
That's a threat. That's an active threat. That is you will be friends or else. So if Henry VI if it had played out differently, we would see that as diplomacy in action, or possibly statesmanship and kingship. In the hands of a more, frankly, tyrannical king, it would look very, very different, I think. And we'd read it very, very differently.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think, Philippa, what you touched briefly with Lottie Rose just now, her saying, no, Richard was coming back. He was coming back from Ireland with the Cade Rebellion, and he was boiling for it. He'd already made up his mind at that point that he was going to be going king. And this is an argument that goes backwards and forwards a lot. I think
have to remember where
the problem was he probably looked more aggressive than he was, because if you think about it, like you say, he's come back, he's gathering troops as he's going. He could literally just be walking down, but he happens to have 1,000 massive dudes with all their armor and stuff, because they have to carry that stuff. They're having to make that. So he could have been coming aggressively with those men, or he could have just been coming with those men. But
also, York's a war hero, so there is an element to which any room he walks into, it becomes a bit of a measuring contest.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he's a bit of a he's a bit like that.
It looked like that he might have been coming over from Ireland, spoiling for it and going, this is it, I'm going for it now. But that one, it's so difficult to say, I think, at what point York really does. It's like, was he coming in from the start wanting the throne? No, he probably wasn't. So at what point it was, it's impossible to say, really. I do think, though, that whatever anybody thought of York, he was the most powerful man in the land, and to actively choose to push him away and not have him on your council or near your council is foolish. It's very, very foolish, because you are playing into the hands of a very rich and powerful man, and you push him
and
out,
you're leaving him no room. You're leaving
Exactly.
him no room to do anything. And the
Absolutely.
population is screaming about the status quo. They're not happy. And like I say, everyone is fighting to be close to the king, to get him the right to counsel, until the point where I think York doesn't see that I think the king becomes almost irrelevant, and it becomes York versus Margaret of Anjou.
Yeah, I do. Anyway, you think this is fucked up? You should see what they're talking about in the comments.
Okay, yeah, right. Look, here's the deal. First cousin marriage is legal in the UK. There are lots of first cousins who are married in this country. In this country,
Are there?
sometimes generationally. Oh yeah, lots of first cousins are married.
I don't know it. I don't know.
And sometimes it's generational. And there are in certain communities there are problems because of it.
I bet there are.
There are sadly genetic conditions that are, but yes, so it is perfectly legal to marry your first cousin. But as with so many things, just because it's legal doesn't make it right.
Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Right? And there's also a point. There's definitely also a point to bear in mind about the frankly unregulated manner in which sperm donation clinics function, particularly in the States, where it's paper cup. I don't know. But like, I mean, I'm seeing things. I'm seeing commentary about there being. They talk about like when you hear words like sibling pool, not sibling cluster, not sibling group, sibling pool, numbering 100 and up.
What?
There is so much more accidental incest than you think. Because these people who get sperm from sperm clinics were told not to tell their children they were donor conceived. So lots of people don't know they're donor conceived, and thus don't know they're dating a half sibling. So cousin marriage doesn't even matter because people are dating people are having babies with their half siblings. Okay. So yes, there we go.
So there we have it.
So actually, the royals weren't that bad.
Yeah,
they were.
See?
They were. Oh yeah.
In comparison.
I mean, it's not ancient Egypt. You can't go out with your siblings.
In the royal family, first cousins might be of a prohibited degree of consanguinity, but a papal dispensation could buy you off of that. They have actually far more strict rules around incest, to be honest.
Oh yeah, I mean, actually, some were like further away. Some were much further away than the first cousins, much further away. So,
and it still required dispensation. They were actually much stricter about incest than we are.
Right. Anyway,
you couldn't stir someone else's porridge. Basically, that was another thing. No stirring of the same porridge.
Don't say porridge when you're talking about cups and stuff. Right. Anyway.
It's time. Ladies, are you feeling ethereal?
It's odd when I've got my glasses on. I don't like it.
I'm feeling ethanol. I'll tell you that.
I'm going to remove one layer. It's more manageable, isn't it, if you remove one layer?
That's what she said.
At least it doesn't catch on my eyelashes.
Past problems goes back.
Dear widows.
Oh, hello.
I have recently started a new business breeding livestock. It's going extremely well, and I would like to expand into wealthy areas. At the moment, my business is extremely successful and I am based in Wales. I would like to move my business into London, where I'm aware that people have greater disposable income.
Yeah, but
I'm happy to fly down there for work. My concern is that my livestock might not be welcome. I feel so
on the plane.
Oh, you definitely got dragons. Has she got dragons?
That's how she's flying to London.
Oh.
I feel so sorry for my poor, majestic beasts, fighting the prejudice of not being allowed into the capital city. But it's bonfire night coming up, and I'm fairly sure I could make a killing. Please, can you give me some advice to persuade the people of London to allow my majestic friends into their wonderful city?
Mm.
Yours sincerely, the cousin of that bird from Game of Thrones. P.S. You have no idea how much poison it would take to kill a dragon.
Oh,
Yes.
that's true. I wouldn't know. I don't know if I'd
Right.
want to kill a dragon.
I wasn't.
No.
Especially with
he's
gas,
okay.
especially with fuel
Okay.
being so expensive at the moment, you could use it to keep you warm.
Okay. Right. Here's my suggestion. Problem asker. I'm going to call you caller. Dragon rider. How much
Sounds
cardboard? How much cardboard do you have access to, Dragon Rider? My reason for asking is I think this is time for a Blue Peter project. And what I'm going to suggest to you is that you make yourself like that a bit. I'm going to suggest that you make yourself out of some cardboard boxes. You're going to need some pipe cleaners, obviously. Bit of cardboard box,
Sticky tape.
Thank you, Catherine.
Sorry.
Bit of sticky back plastic. Bit of sticky back plastic. So we're going to need some
Nobody
pipe
ever knew
cleaners.
where to get that from in the 80s.
I had some. W.H. Smith's.
And what I'm going to need you to do is I'm going to need you to create your very own cardboard Winnebago, into which you will secrete your dragon. You can have multiple dragons. And what you will tell Londoners that what you have created is a flying Winnebago. The Londoners will accept a flying Winnebago, particularly if you tell them that there's a beer caddy on board. So you have one that's a beer caddy, one that's a pie and mash house, and one that's a fish and chipper. And you tell people that these are in fact Winnebagos filled with beer and food, and they will welcome you
with open
beyond
arms.
measure.
I reckon you could just you could just tell them that it's eco-friendly and it'll be fine.
Yes, it's a solar powered
vehicle.
Solar powered Winnebago.
It actually doesn't even need charging. So
it won't attract the ULEZ charge because it's not running on petrol.
Yep, ULEZ free.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go. That's how you do it.
I think it's an eco-friendly form of transport, and that is how you will get into London.
And if you are also serving food out of it, if anybody becomes suspicious, what's the answer, friends?
Give them some pie and mash.
You won't have to. You'll just they can just be incinerated.
Dracarys.
Free and fast.
And then just blow the ash away.
Yeah.
No one would even know they were there.
There you go.
Perfect. Lovely. Sorted.
Solution for everything.
Problem solved.
As always, I don't think there's been one yet that we haven't offered sound, practical, realistic, and entirely suitable advice for.
Well, I mean, look, there you go. There you go.
Like it.
So,
right,
Catherine, tell us all about it.
The stage was set for war.
Here. It was. Yeah. Well, don't forget, of course, as well, they're already at war at the moment. We're in the thick of the 100 Years' War, aren't we, as well, at the moment? So that's all going on.
I mean, it was
years, 130.
I'm surprised anyone grew past like 20 at this point.
It's pretty impressive to still be going.
I mean, frankly, war, plague. I mean, a broken bone can be a fucking death sentence.
Exactly. An insect bite.
A toothache.
Malaria is still a right.
A cut.
A what?
Yeah, there's malaria in the home counties. There's dragons.
Dragons, definitely dragons.
Outside London, obviously. Obviously.
That's why Henry VII was a hard bastard that won at Bosworth, because he actually was strong enough to manage dragons.
Maybe he whipped one of them out his ass.
He was whipping his dragon out like Henry VII.
Today's terrible innuendo. Anyway. Yes.
Is there a dragon in your pocket?
Or are your pants on fire? Why is there a fire in your crotch? What's happening there?
Because your haircut.
Cystitis. Carry on.
No.
What the hell is wrong with you?
A lot. Hi. Have we met before? I don't know. Can we carry on? It's you, love.
Okay.
Babe, it's you.
Okay, so
Sort your life out, Catherine.
I don't think there's any hope of that.
Get a
Really?
grip.
You, if you have any hope of
Give
that
up.
happening at this point, I don't know where you've been for the last 2.5 years. Because clearly not in the same room as me. So there we go. All right. So Philippa mentioned how an accord was passed in, where the arrangement became that if that Henry VI would live out his natural life, and then when he passed away, the crown would not go to his son Edward; it would go to York, and if York had already died, his heirs. So this happens, and there's things I've written down in different orders. It's hard to know which way to put it first, but basically this happens in the October of 1460. So York at this point is now Timmy, Duke of York, because he is a problem. So he probably thinks he's won through this shit at this point, because he's like, well, you know, he's going to mump it. He's getting on a bit. He's obviously not well. So I've just got to bide my time.
He's designing his tomb.
He's designing his tomb. Tickety tock.
He's half
not
in
going
it.
to be long. And if the worst comes to the worst, and somehow I mump it first, well, I've got 4 sons here of, well, Richard was still quite little, wasn't he? But it was looking promising. I've technically probably got 4 sons that are going to mature here. So, you know, there's a whole line of going on. We're there. We're 95% of the way there. Margaret of Anjou, you can only imagine how incandescent she was, because her son's just been disinherited by one of the people she hates most on the entire planet. And so she's obviously a bit pissy about this. So what we have here is the Battle of Wakefield, which took place on the 30th of December 1460, and this was essentially a Lancastrian plot to try and off Richard, Duke of York. And as Lancastrian plots went, it was one of the more successful ones, because they were a bit hit and miss, especially on the battlefield, especially if Somerset was in charge. Anyway, so this took place at a place called Sandal Magna near Wakefield. Yeah, thank you. And York, thinking, well, I'm going to be your king very soon, had gone and ensconced himself at Sandal Castle, thinking that this was a good place for him to be able to sort of start to court this success he had incoming. Now, there's different accounts of this. So this is a bit of a weird one in the sense that this was a big battle. You know, there's some major shit going down now, but there's very sketchy accounts of it. There's lots of information that we would often have missing. So York's in there inside this castle, feeling quite good about life. And they don't know whether the Lancastrians just kind of and just came out and went for it, or if a lot of them sort of hid it. Just have the image like all hiding in the undergrowth like David Bellamy waiting for their moment. You know what I mean? But he knew that they were coming. He got wind that they were en route, and for whatever reason, it could have been that he was low on supplies, and or that he didn't want to end up in a siege situation, because that's never a winner. For even if you win, you've lost in a siege situation. It's horrendous. And so out he comes, and he tackles the Lancastrians head on. Bad idea. So a lot of people think he was killed on the battlefield. We don't know. He might have been. There is a theory that's quite popular that he got a severe knee injury and fell from his horse and died from that later on. Other people say that he was captured on the field, dragged away, and later on was sort of like tortured and berated, teased, and then beheaded, humiliated. So we're not exactly sure, but anyway, he mumped it. He died as a result of just after the Battle of Wakefield. And there he is.
It was a battlefield-related demise.
Yes, it's a battlefield-related demise, yes. Now, some people also say that he was deceived by John Neville, another Neville of Raby, because he was expecting reinforcements to come, and then this guy, some people say, came up carrying the wrong colours deliberately to fool him. Somebody came to fool him into thinking that the troops were there. Maybe like that's why he went out, because he was an experienced military. You know, he was nobody's fool. No one can quite work out why he came out and placed himself in that vulnerable position, especially when he knew like what was coming. But out he went. He thought the Earl of Warwick was going to be coming with support. You know, all these things. Anyway, it was a bit of a clusterfuck, really, for the Yorkists. At the end of the day, there was 30-something battles in the Wars of the Roses, including all the littler spats. Most of them were Yorkist victories, but this one was obviously a massive victory for the Lancastrians. There's no accurate record of casualties. They're estimated at 200 for the Lancastrians and between 700 and 22,500 for the Yorkists.
22,500.
Sorry, 2,500.
Oh,
I think I did say 22,
Jesus.
didn't I? That's not really possible because I don't think there were even that many people there. Sorry about that. That's got 200. 22,500. No, between
Rather
700 and 2,500.
Right.
So
Still
also,
big. Still a big number.
yes,
It's
it's
still a big
still-
number.
Well, one is too big.
So they
really,
lost
isn't it?
more then.
Yeah,
They lost
it
more,
is,
basically. They lost more.
So, and there were other notable Yorkist deaths as well. So, Richard, Duke of York's son Edmund, who was his second eldest son, the Earl of Rutland, was killed. Now he'd tried to escape. He fled. Okay, but he went over Wakefield Bridge, but he was caught and he was killed.
And wasn't that like a vengeful death as well? That was like a
yes, they say one of those things. Again, it's not 100%, but they think it was done by Clifford, who was doing it as the revenge for the death of his father at St Albans, as you mentioned earlier. So, and also the 5th Earl of Salisbury, Richard Neville, who was the father of the Kingmaker, Warwick the Kingmaker.
Yeah.
Now he was captured. He was taken to the Lancastrian camp, and they held him. And they were thinking about letting him go because in the day he's minted, and they could have got a really good ransom off of him. So they had him there at Pontefract Castle. He wanted to try and escape, but what happened basically was, you shouldn't laugh, but all the local people hated him so much because he was such a terrible overlord that they dragged him out and beheaded him themselves.
I told you they were pissed off. I told you they were pissed off.
They were cross. So yeah, so actually at the end of the day, he probably would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for you pesky kids. But he probably would have got away with it. The locals were like, nope, none of that. We've got him now. This is our chance. So there we go. Margaret of Anjou, clearly very happy about this, and decided to take full advantage of using this. So York's body was originally interred in the Church of the Mendicant. Thank you. Friars in Pontefract, but his head, wearing the paper crown to mock his desires for the throne, was placed on Micklegate Bar with the head of the other main Lancaster Yorkist victims. If you want to call them victims, they were victims. Micklegate Bar on the southern entrance, so that York can look upon York. And it was left there for 3-4 months, I think. It was quite a while, so everybody could have a good look. It's a big pointy thing if you keep doing things like that. So, so at this point, it's all kicking off. No, people aren't happy. Some of them are. Margaret goes up north. She's up there in Scotland, and there's pockets of all sorts of things cracking off. There's people gathering armies all over the show here because they know it's going to kick off now. And so it's all. But Margaret's men are not very popular, so she's losing a little bit of support because of the way they are treating the people in the towns and the cities and the property as they are gradually making their way back down to London again, which was a very slow business.
It's a long way.
Now, because Richard, Duke of York, is dead, his heir is his eldest son, Edward of Earl of March. He becomes the 4th Duke of Norfolk. He's 18-year-old, he's 6'4", and he's Max Irons.
Yes, he is.
He is.
Fitting.
Okay, so
Thank you for the photo, Catherine.
I sent it to you the other day. Here's a photo of Max Irons. Enjoy your day. I will. So yeah, he is even crosser than Margaret of Anjou was. He takes it to the next level. He's got this now revenge thing going on that he wants to do. So he decides he's going to take up his father's mantle, and he leads an army against Jasper Tudor. He's got Warwick on his side as well, obviously Edmund's side, and Owen Tudor is there as well at this battle. He's 60 years old, poor dude, at this point. So he is the father of
doing very well.
He is. He's the one who married Catherine of Valois.
So he's Henry the Sixth's stepfather.
Yeah. and the father of Jasper Tudor and Owen Tudor, who was married to Margaret Beaufort. On and on it goes. Anyway, and at this point, Warwick still has Henry VI as prisoner. So we haven't had this kind of like, well, he's dead, so the king's free, so let's just carry on as we were. None of this has happened. So even though York is dead, they still don't have the king back and on the throne and back to normal. Whatever the hell normal is with these people. Anyway, this is the bit we have. They're going off to battle. The second battle of St Albans, it was much worse than the first. The first one was like handbags at dawn compared to some of the other ones. But this is where we get the three suns in the sky, you know, the sun in splendor. We don't know. Edward's like, no, there's three of us now, the three sons of York. It's a good sign. And everyone's like, yes, you're right. It wasn't anyway. It's spoiler alert.
Fair play to like twisting it that quick.
It's good, but it was another Lancastrian victory. They were assembling all over Scotland. Anyway, the February the 17th, 1461, Second Battle of St Albans, they absolutely trashed the place. They ripped that place to shreds. They decimated it. But Warwick managed to escape. Now, speaking, Amanda put up earlier, she put a question saying, do you think that Edward really was Henry VI's son? You know, would because there was a rumor, wasn't it, that Margaret of Anjou had a fling with Somerset and all these types of things. So Prince Edward was set aside. Now, the Yorkists that summer of 1460 had initiated a propaganda campaign to say that very thing. There's rumours were going around that Edward was not, in fact, Henry's son. And this was all part of them building up to another layer of Richard needing to be king because there was no legitimate heir to the Lancastrian line. But then I thought, that can't be true. That can't be right. Because we all know that it was the Tudors that invented propaganda and nobody else had done it before. So I find that very difficult to believe.
I mean, no one questioned Edward IV's parentage either. That definitely didn't happen.
There was nothing to do. Archers! Nothing to do with that whatsoever.
The fact that he was seemingly conceived when his dad was out of the country.
Sperm by post.
Didn't his mother say at some point that he wasn't his father?
George, Duke of Clarence.
Yeah, but apparently there's some claim that Mummy backed that up.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, she was like, because Cecily had a favourite, and it wasn't Edward
or Richard or any of her other children except for George. George was her favourite. Georgie Porgy Pudding and Pie
died in a battle Malmsey wine.
We can make that right.
I'll leave the jingles to Kat.
Yeah. Anyway, so now due to the lack of, because I think this was Edward's reasoning now, right? My dad's dead. I've taken up his mantle. I'm fighting this. They didn't call it the Yorkist cause then. Well, they did and they didn't. Roses. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So he says, so this is his slightly tenuous way of justifying why he now thinks he is king. Okay, so he is now heir to the throne because his father obviously was killed at Wakefield, and due to the accord that said that in the event of the king, even though he would become for the love of Christ, right? When Henry VI died, it would be his father and then him and his brothers that would be in line to the throne. His father's dead, therefore he is next in line to the throne after Henry VI. Yeah. But Catherine, I hear you cry, Henry VI is still alive, therefore Edward is not king. Well, you'd say that, wouldn't you? So would I, but he didn't. He said that forces loyal to the king had killed his father, and consequently they had broken the Act of Accord, and that meant he had the right to the throne. I mean, you can make it how fair, accurate, whatever it is you want to think that is. Anyway, on the 26th of February, Max Irons goes into London. And apparently he was well received, looking sexy. Apparently he was well received by the locals. He was well received by all.
Max Irons.
What else can you do? It's very complicated. A number of things happened over several days with different groups of different types of people. But a series of events led to the people, the bishops and the lords. He went to Baynard's Castle, which was these family residents down in London. The Bishop of Canterbury and the Chancellor, which was George Neville, brother, I think, of the Kingmaker. And they apparently all wholeheartedly lent them their support to be king. And so on March the 4th, he sat on the King's Bench at the Palace of Westminster in the fancy clobber. And this symbolised the personal authority of the king as a judge. And behind the highest courts in the land, he wasn't obviously a crowned or anointed at this point, but he put himself forward. He did all the things that make him look like, in the scene, wearing the stuff, that he was king. And from that point, that he and all the other supporters of the House of York and everything like that all accepted him as king. So that's how we find him there. So I think really, sort of coming up to that's what happened to York after York died, and where it left the situation, and where that takes us, because it brings me really to legacy. To sort of wrap it up, I would argue that his legacy is massive, from the tiniest of things up to the biggest. So we start with tiny little things like rainbows. Richard of York gave battle in vain. We use him to teach children about rainbows. We have the Grand Old Duke of York. That might not be him, but
That's not him. That's not him.
But it might be some French dude, but it could be. So we come from tiny little things like that. But then we also have books, fiction and non-fiction. We have vlogs, blogs, podcasts, TV series.
Max Irons.
We have Max Irons. We have all these forms of media that have turned to him for different types of ways of telling his story, talking about the Wars of the Roses and looking at him. There is so much scope here with his story. He had obviously 4 sons originally. He lost Edmund, but he had other 3 sons, 2 of whom became kings, 1 of whom died as a traitor in really horrible circumstances, in a whole different series of fights where the Yorkists just blatantly took each other down from within. We have obviously the son who became king and married Elizabeth Woodville and caused a whole storm with that. So his sons made contentious marriages in contentious situations. He made
all of his sons, in fact.
He made the marriages within his families, obviously made connections with the wreath, with all the marriages and all the good, he perpetuated all these good marriage cycles. The way he acted, so whether you thought he was right or wrong in what he did, brought home to a lot of people the fact that when you have somebody as wealthy as a magnate in your land, whose wealth and power as a result far exceeds that of the monarch and the monarchy, you're in danger of this type of thing. And that had 2 effects going forward on Henry VII. So the first was he revived the Star Chamber so that the laws and things would have to have a lot more accountability in the things that they did, the actions that they took, and all of these type of things. So it became harder for these people to run around unchecked. The second, and probably more significant, I would say, is that it made him say, we are only recruiting people from in this very small pile of people. This is dangerous. That there are people out there who are not within this sphere, who are very capable, but much more don't have the same amount of money or power, and we can control them and we can use them. This is how, and Henry VIII took that mantle. And this is how you start to see the rise of people like Wolsey and Cromwell. That would probably not have happened previously. It would not have happened. So Richard of York inadvertently gave Henry VII those lessons. Revive the Star Chamber, keep these people in check. Don't make them feel that they're entitled to anything and everything and get away with anything just because they're dead posh and they've got a lot of money. No one's indispensable.
Don't give away stuff to keep people happy.
Yeah,
they'll come back for more.
So I would say that was sort of a big thing that maybe George Duke of Clarence. And the next thing I would say is he takes us all the way through late into the Henry VIII's reign, because the Wars of the Roses doesn't stop, obviously, at Bosworth. So Clarence has his son, Edward Plantagenet, the 17th Earl of Warwick. You see both the pretenders to the throne claiming to be him or matching up with him. And so eventually, hang on, I've written this down. I should read this to you. So Perkin Warbeck saying he was Richard, Duke of York, Obviously, he wasn't, but he gets in league with Edward Plantagenet. They plan to break out. They both end up getting executed. So there's a reverberation from that. Lambert Simnel said he was Warwick. Later on, and he was the Lambert Simnel was joined by John de la Pole, Earl of Lincoln, who was Edward IV, Richard III's nephew. Their sister was Margaret of Burgundy, so there was influence over there. She hated them. She funded all this stuff. Then we have the Battle of Stokefield. John de la Pole dies, but you see the Poles still reverberating. All that they're very Catholic as well. So you have all this conflict with their Yorkist line, their Catholicism, and all of this is still raging behind the scenes well into the reign of Henry VIII. Shaping the executions and the arguments and the policies of and even into the reign of Mary I, where he becomes Archbishop of Canterbury, where de la Pole becomes Archbishop of Canterbury, and we see Margaret de la Pole being executed as this elderly lady, purely because they're using the Catholicism as a thing, but also because if her son is potentially treasonous, the whole family is treasonous. So all of this, because they're Yorkists, is all still knocking back and back. All of these things, the reigns of all these monarchs still being highlighted and shaped generations ahead. And I think really, you know, the Yorkists pretty much pissed themselves out the water, didn't they? They all killed each other. It was all a horrendous mess. But if Henry had been well, if Richard had stepped away, if he'd had a healthy son and he hadn't been, little Edmund hadn't been disinherited, there are so many things. If York hadn't taken the line he had and maybe been so aggressive about it, or had just been stood in the background, even if he meant well and was literally just saying, I just want to come in and help. I'm happy to sort of assist and then step back and assist and then step back when I needed. If he hadn't have done that, we wouldn't have seen the reactions of Somerset and Margaret of Anjou. You know, Henry may have gone on to have another child. All of these things, we probably wouldn't have had the Wars of the Roses if York hadn't stepped up and did what he did. And that just would have changed the face of England forever. We probably wouldn't have had the Tudor line that we did. And then the Reformation could have been very different. Sorry, Kat.
Oh, yeah. Just a clarification. No, Paige, Catherine didn't say Margaret Pole was executed by Mary I. She said that Margaret Pole's son became Mary I, Archbishop of Canterbury, and then she reversed, and then and then she reversed and basically said, and his mother was executed in horrible circumstances. So she the bit about Mary connects to Reginald, who there was actually discussion about them two marrying as well.
Yeah, actually,
before he took holy orders. So this sort of all kind of connects and bleeds together. And in some ways, so that's another reason that kind of Margaret is in a very dangerous position, because there's that game is being played. And talking about Margaret of Anjou and her unwillingness to capitulate to these accords, and her being fervent and fomenting further conflicts. Agreeing to that accord is a death sentence for her son by the time he becomes a man. She has to know that. There's no way she doesn't know that.
It's like every faction backed the other one into a corner.
Yeah. Margaret was left with no choice but to try and fight, because either her son was going to die in battle or at the end of an assassin's blade or poison. Or executed. That's a fact. His forget the claim to the throne. He is too dangerous to keep living and to keep living free. Impossible. And because of her Anjou connections, that is international war. That's what's going to happen. So it's an absolute omnishambles. And equally, because of what's happened with Richard, Duke of York, and he feels backed into a corner, he feels that his place has been denied because he feels that he belongs at the king's right-hand side. And he's also concerned about this French queen taking control of everything. They could not come to terms. And what happens is they just become so set on vengeance and believing that what they know is right, and, you know, because my brother or my son or my father was killed, well, I'm going to kill your father or brother or son. Well, guess what? Everybody's somebody's father or brother or son or mother or daughter or sister. And the vengeance will just never stop.
Yeah.
It
I mean,
will
there
just
were
never
other
stop.
factional fighting going on, so that influenced which side people took. Oh, right, they're on that side, I'm going to be on this side because I want to fight them. So there was multiple layers. It wasn't just about who was going to be the advisor to the king. Warwick, for instance, he's on York side because of the Percy Neville dispute that's going on.
What you have is incredibly wealthy, privileged people who just want to be more privileged and wealthy.
Yeah,
that's what's
it's really gross.
That's what's happening.
Things never change.
Yeah, it is really gross.
And there's an enormous cost.
There is an enormous cost.
Enormous cost to that kind of behaviour.
But
I don't really see Henry. I think I see Henry VI as an innocent as a person. I don't see it as innocent as if he had no impact on what happened.
But it wasn't his fault.
No,
I mean he has no. And the thing is that this is the problem with monarchy, because it does kind of make me laugh when we have these kind of conversations about right to the throne and who was the rightful king and all of this. A system whereby, through no basis of skill or aptitude,
no merit
or
whatsoever,
ethics, you simply happen to have fallen out of the right vagina and then not died in infancy, that qualifies you to govern a nation.
Yeah. Well, and you're right. That's
be in charge of everything.
That's the problem. The role was everything. You're in charge of everything. So what you say goes. So if you say the wrong things, stupid things that are going to lose you, are going to piss people off, are going to lose you money, are going to put the lives of your population in danger, then that's the bit where I start to think, well, yeah, no, not as a person. I'm not saying Henry VI as a person, but the fact he's in that position led to everything. Really.
Yeah. Real suffering.
Real suffering.
But it certainly wasn't helped by Richard, Duke of York's inability to take a back seat. Because here's the deal. I don't
but
think
then he wasn't the only one. I don't know that that's fair, because Suffolk didn't take a back seat. Somerset didn't take a back seat.
Somerset was a nightmare. They lost normally in Gascony.
Yeah. They caused huge issues. The fact he married Margaret of Anjou lost him more lands. Like, he's not the only one to have tried to do this. He's the last one to have tried to do it.
Yeah. True.
But that's why I said,
and he was
sidelining York like that was possibly the biggest mistake, because sometimes it's keep your enemies closer. You push him away,
and stop it.
It's one of those things. It's like Richard III probably would have made a very good protector, but the fear of being pushed out made him push back.
But equally also the fear the Woodvilles felt of him.
Yeah. It's all just like so. Yeah. So
someone did have to take control as well, though. There was this vacuum.
So I think whatever his motives were, and whatever they changed, and at whatever point, whether you like him or you don't, or rightly or wrongly or whatever, I would argue his legacy is ginormous.
It is.
I agree.
You're right.
I agree with that.
It's a good word.
Ginormous. But ladies, we've been going for 1 hour and nearly 40 minutes.
Up.
I have a dog to walk.
It's the last week next
I'm
week.
kind of sad. Philippa, what's happening next week?
For Zebra.
Are you ready for another stretch, ladies and gentlemen?
This is a stretch. This is probably our biggest stretch so far.
It's a reach and a half.
Everyone likes a good reach.
So we were like, well, what starts with a Z? Like, zebra.
Zoology.
Zoology, zebra. So from that, we got to the Glutton Club. This,
So sorry.
this eating of exotic animals for pleasure and fun and one-upmanship in the Victorian era, I believe. Well, we'll find out because we're going to do it next week.
I'll let you know.
Yeah.
So
that'll be our
there we
last
go.
one.
That is, and then there will be a roundup week. So it's going to be a good old roundup week, that one, isn't it? We've got a right variety. Okay, so that is where we are with all of the things. Right. You can support us. We appreciate it very, very much. All our little Winnebagos at what is it? History After. No, what is it?
www.buymeacoffee.com/had podcast.
Scrolling along the bottom of the screen.
We've also got a Substack. It's at History After Dark Hub, all one word, at substack.com.
I finally cracked it that I thought I'd remembered absolutely everything and then my brain failed me. So yes, you can support us at buymeacoffee.com/have-podcast. Thank you so much to buy an actual Winnebago, not a cardboard one full of dragons. We really do appreciate all the support that you've given us there and on both platforms. Do remember though that we are not going to be on Instagram much longer. We are going to finish Deceased Gits and then we are moving only to YouTube. So if you haven't made that move, then please do. We will still keep the page open on Instagram, as you know, for bits and pieces. But if you want to watch the real
and close friends,
all the bonkers stuff, it's all going to be happening on here. Merch. We put up some more merch this week on Teespring. There are some beavers. We need to. If you don't know about that, then that sounds even more suspicious than it actually is. So our merch is on Teespring. Now we're going to be doing some more updating to some bits and pieces. And girls, I haven't got my Had t-shirt on. Come on, if you flash your tits and show everyone your t-shirt. Okay, so we're going to be getting some more bits and pieces because we're having those. There's going to be an update because you can still see on there that it says Catherine Brooks and it's not Catherine Brooks anymore, it's Catherine Ibbotson. So if you want one of the old ones that will become a collector's item, you best hurry up because that's going to be coming off very shortly.
Yeah.
Yes.
So get yourself down there to have a look at those. Thank you all so much for joining us on all the platforms, all your comments, some of the extremely interesting side conversations that were a bit alarming. Please do all the normal bits and pieces, like, subscribe, share, hit the bell button, share this with people who you think might like it. Put lots of comments in, all the bits and pieces that make the algorithms go, yeah, they're great, we like them. We do.
Okay. Winky face. And so
until next week with the Z's for isn't Z.
Yeah, for glutton.
The Z for something that isn't Z.
Z for glutton. That's the alphabet your kids need to learn. I apologise. I'm going to count us out in 3, 2, 1.
Bye.
Bye.